When in Germany is a workday not a workday? Now that's a serious question. In a previous video I explained that if you take Monday as the first day of the week, then the day that Germans call midweek isn't actually the middle of the week. And then I went on to explain that even if you take only the working week, it's still not the middle of the week because in Germany, Saturday counts as a work day. And of course, I got a bunch of comments from Germans telling me that actually Saturday isn't a work day. And some comments from Germans telling me that actually there are two words for work day in German and it depends which one you use. Well, allow me to respond to your actually with an actually of my own. You see, this is something that even native Germans get wrong, but to be fair, it is complicated. The two words in question are Werktag, which I'm going to translate as workday, and Arbeitstag, which I can probably translate as business day. The fact that the online dictionaries I most regularly use appear to be as confused about this as anybody else just goes to show that even dictionaries can't always be relied upon. A Werktag is any day that is not a Sunday or a public holiday. So that means that every Saturday, unless of course it's a holiday, is a Werktag. This is very important for you to know if you drive, because a road sign that says Werktags is in force on Saturdays. If it's only in force Mondays to Fridays, it will say so explicitly. That's not quite the same thing as an Arbeitstag, although a lot of Germans and apparently dictionaries seem to think that it is. Now, if you're among those who pointed out to me that although Saturday is a Werktag, it's not an Arbeitstag, you may be feeling pretty pleased with yourselves at the moment. Well, an Arbeitstag is any day on which your employer normally expects or needs work to be done. To be more exact, it's any day on which more than 80% of the workforce is supposed to be at work. So, if you work in an office, your Arbeitstage are probably Monday to Friday, but if you work in a supermarket, they're more likely to be Monday to Saturday. And if you work in a hospital, every day can be an Arbeitstag. It's a bit more complicated than that, but you get the general idea. A Werktag is any day that is not a Sunday or a public holiday. An Arbeitstag is any normal day of work in your profession. If your Saturday doesn't look any different from your Friday, it's an Arbeitstag. Unless you're unemployed. This has legal consequences, some of them unintended, which just goes to show how important it is to make sure that legislation is correctly worded. For example, according to the law, if you are sick for more than 3 calendar days, you must get a sick note to your employer at the latest by the following Arbeitstag. That might be difficult if you fall sick on Thursday, the Friday is a public holiday, and you work in a restaurant that's open on Sundays, because doctor surgeries are normally closed on Saturdays. Fortunately, there is another law that says if something like this happens, the deadline is automatically extended to the following Werktag. Another thorny issue concerns rents and when to pay them. According to the law, your landlord must give you at least until the 3rd Werktag of the month to pay your rent. But since banks don't process payments on Saturdays, this can be a problem if there happens to be a weekend in the way. In 2010, the Federal Court of Justice ruled in a very complex case that when it comes to calculating deadlines for rents, Saturday should not count as a Werktag. If a tenant is paid on the last day of the month and then immediately transfers the rent, you can't blame the tenant if the bank is shut for the next 2 days. On the other hand, the same ruling established that for the purposes of terminating rental contracts, Saturday does count as a Werktag because it is one, and because the fact that banks happen to be closed on that day is completely irrelevant. So really, if you're confused, don't worry, so is everybody else. But the simple rule of thumb is this: for most purposes, Saturday counts as a work day, even if you don't actually have to work on that day. I hope that clears everything up for you. And if you work in a hospital, that's the one. If you are too sick to work, in 2010, the Federal Court of Justice,